Chapter 5. Zhang Shulin had only seen Zhu Xiyu from afar before this. Because of the fact that he was so handsome, it gave off a feeling of ferocity. He'd originally thought that the other man was a tyrannical, hostile, and unsympathetic person. He must be difficult to get along with. But after coming into contact with the real man, he finally realized that reality and his imagination was completely contrary. As long as you didn't provoke him, he wouldn't bother with every little thing. His bright red lips, even when not smiling, always bore a slight smile, making anyone who looked at him feel very comfortable. He was a little Sandra, a little laid back, and very carefree, incredibly charismatic. If it wasn't for the previous misunderstanding, Zhang Shulin would have been happy to become friends with the other man. But now, the feeling of shame was so overwhelming that he couldn't lift his head around the other man. All of the Zhang family members felt the same way. They silently moved to the farthest corner of the fire, their faces still a little red with embarrassment. All except Qin Se, who sat firmly as opposite Zhu Xiyu, poking the fire with a stick from time to time, as if nothing had happened. As it was getting late, Zhu Yunsheng felt somewhat sleepy. He covered his mouth and yawned. 2 drops of shiny tears were squeezed out of his eyes, hanging on his eyelashes. This scene reminded Qin Se of a cat lying asleep by the fire in winter, so lazy and cute. If his hand hadn't covered his mouth when he yawned, would he have exposed 2 small, sharp canine teeth? He quickly glanced at the young man, then stared at the fire, lost in thought. After his yawn, Zhou Yinsheng also stared at the fire, thinking about none other than his lover, who was still MIA. He was once the protagonist, once a supporting role, but also once a cannon fodder. His identity could change at any time. He could be anyone, and they'd only been together for 4 lifetimes. How could he be confident that the man's basic data wouldn't be altered? What if he became a completely different person from before? For example, the protagonist Cho? Thinking of this, his body suddenly shuddered, and he fixed his gaze on Zhang Shulin. Touching upon the bright red cinder on the other man's wrist, his eyes wavered, struggling inside. Zhang Shulin's scalp numbed under his observation. Zhang Jiarui also sensed something, tactfully reminding, "My big brother is already betrothed to Little Black." Qinse frowned fiercely, a strong urge to deny it rising in his heart. But Zhang Shulin was his life savior. He had promised to become the other's husband to repay his kindness. A man's promise was as heavy as a mountain. He couldn't just break it. After several struggles in his heart, he didn't say anything in the end, but his complexion was a little unsightly. He couldn't understand why he wanted to deny it in front of Zhu Xiyu. This had nothing to do with the other man, right? After hearing this, Zhou Yunsheng just laughed contemptuously, leaving his previously wild imaginings behind. Everyone quieted down again, but Qinse's mood was no longer as idle as before. He resembled the fire that was crackling and burning brighter and brighter before him, unbearably anxious. He raised his head to sweep his eyes over the young man several times, then quickly looked away before he could notice. Finally, he simply picked up a piece of wood and shaved it with his dagger, throwing the bits into the fire, burning them to ashes. It was as if if this would burn away the troubles and confusion in his heart as well. Time passed imperceptibly. Soon it was the middle of the night, and Qinse's complexion finally returned to normal. He said in a deep voice, "I, Jiarui, and these brothers will keep vigil. You guys sleep." He pointed to to the Zhu family's guards. Zhu Fushun was tied into a rice dumpling, still unconscious. What's the meaning of this? You don't take me for a man? Zhu Yunsheng drew a dagger from his boot and narrowed his eyes in a sneer. Young master, you're not a man. Don't be so stubborn, okay? Hurry and sleep by Nanny. Lu Shi spread bedding on some branches while giving her young master a meaningful look. Tweety also wanted to say something, but hesitated. Jinsei still had the same expressionless face. He looked the youth up and down, his eyes slightly doubtful. He wouldn't blame him for his lack of confidence in Zhou Yunsheng. You could only blame Zhu Ziyu's small, powerless body and his arms and legs that were thin like bamboo poles. The gear in this world were comparable to a woman. They naturally looked different than a Herculean man. Seeing his looks, Zhou Yunsheng's heart burned with rage. He threw the dagger into the air and performed a few beautiful tricks, enunciating each word. Look, my martial arts are more than enough to slice you up. Although he'd lost his memory, Jinsei nevertheless wanted to laugh at these words, only feeling that the other man was like a kitten, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, extremely cute. His heart was relentlessly staring up, but his face was completely expressionless. He just nodded simply. Okay, you and I will keep the first 2 hours. The others will form pairs and each keep 2 hours. Those who want to sleep should seize the time now. Zhu Yunsheng grunted in agreement. The guards and Zhang Jiarui huddled together to discuss and arrange the order, then laid down on the ground to sleep. Zhu Yunsheng took the initiative to sit near Jinsei. He grabbed the stick from Jinsei's hand and dug the fire. He took a few sweet potatoes from his pack and threw them in, covering them with hot ash. The parts of Jinsei's body that was near him were all frozen, not daring to move, resembling the poking stick. Zhu Yunsheng touched his arm after seeing his lack of reaction. He touched him again. That, finally, pulled his soul back. Do you want some? Jinsei stared at the beef jerky in the young man's hand, stretched out his mouth, gulping. The spicy and rich, meaty smell drilled into his nostrils, making him salivate, but what made him drool even more was the young man's slender, neat, and round pink fingertips, slightly peeking out. Which one should I eat? As he speculated, he took the beef jerky with a serious expression and mumbled other things, his cheeks appearing dark red under the firelight. Zhu Yunsheng also slowly gnawed on a piece of beef jerky. He then took out a pot of wine, craning his neck to take a gulp. The young man's already rosy lips were moistened by the wine. They looked even more dark red, like blood. His neck was raised in a very graceful arc, and his small Adam's apple moved up and down as he swallowed. He looked extremely cute. Jinsei stared blankly, an ominous glint erupting out of his dark eyes, like a wolf observing prey, wanting to pounce on the prey and bite its throat, swallowing it whole. Zhu Yunsheng's neck felt a little cold. Thinking that the wine had spilled, he casually wiped it, then turned to Jinsei, only to see the other man repeatedly poking at the sweet potatoes with a stick. He gulped frequently, the action very noticeable. He really is a chowhound. Sniggering, Zhu Yunsheng passed over the wine pot and asked, Would you like a drink? Jinsei threw the stick and nodded. He poured the wine into his mouth. Then, seeing the young man turning over the roasted sweet potatoes, not paying any attention to him, he quickly put the bottle to his mouth and took a big gulp. Delicious wine, he praised in his heart, then handed back the wine pot with a straight face, whispering, Zhu Gongji, that marinade recipe from before, can you give it to me? You're quite sharp. You knew to ask me for it in private. Zhu Yunsheng snorted out, laughing, then looked at Tweety. She was already soundly asleep, so he pulled the handkerchief out from her sleeve and handed it over. The handkerchief was stained with Tweety's perfume, making Chinsei a little displeased. He waved it over the fire, waiting for the smell to be carried away by the heat, before carefully folding it into a small square and storing it in his pocket. Sure enough, he was a chowhan, treating a marinade recipe like a treasure. Zhen Shang glanced at him, his lips twitching slightly. More people took turns at night watch. Whenever they heard movement, they quickly extinguished the fire. In this way, a few nights passed peacefully. One night, the sound of a sword fight was heard from lower down the mountain. Everyone was frightened. "I'll go down and take a look." Chinsei pinned the dagger to his waist and warned in a deep voice, "You guys stay here. Don't move. I'll come back soon." "Don't go. You're alone. What if you run into the bandits?" Zhang Shulin rushed over to hug his arm. Chinsei seamlessly shook off his hold, then quickly glanced at the ice sculpture-like young man. At this moment, the young man also had on a worried expression. "I'll be fine, trust me." He said this sentence, then stealthily entered the forest. Zhang Xulin's worried eyes were red. His parents and his younger brother and sisters comforted him until he slowly relaxed. On the other hand, Zhu Shang went to the cave entrance and stared at the torchlight lower down the mountain. In this forest, the foodie loyal dog Gong would go out and bump into his subordinates, then recover his memory. He remembered that he was the heir to Shen Wei Marquisate, and he was also appointed by the emperor to be the commander of the Zhong army. In the capital, he commanded the left behind Zhong Wei, Shen Se Wei, Guang Yang Wei, Ying Tian Wei, and Yang Wei, Mu Ma Tianhu. Outside, he commanded the Jili Yang Zhou Wei and Zhou Wei, Gao Yu Wei, Hui An Wei, Zhen Hai Wei, Shu Zuo Wei, Tai Shang Wei, and other regional armies. He could be called the most powerful man in the world. His father, Marquis Shen Wei, was only a decoration in his presence. The leading cause of his accident was the sudden death of Quyun country's emperor. The Quyun emperor was not the child of the current Empress Dowager. He'd never earned the Empress Dowager's love. The Empress Dowager had a son, but he was frivolous, ruthless, unfilial, and knew no brotherly love. The former emperor had hated him. As soon as he became an adult, he was sent far away to Shu Prefecture and was not allowed to return to the capital. After the former emperor died, the Empress Dowager saw that the new emperor had finally secured the throne, so she pulled the bow without shooting. While she stayed in the Shen Palace, not inquiring about the outside world, in order to relax the emperor's vigilance, she bribed the imperial kitchen to poison the emperor's food. When the poison penetrated too deep into his bones to be removed, the emperor finally noticed it. He immediately sent word to his close friend since childhood, Chinsei, who was stationed at the border, asking him to return to the capital to help the young crown prince ascend the throne. As soon as the latter reached Chinsei, the emperor died. The Empress Dowager hid his death from the public, only reporting that the emperor was seriously ill. Then she wrote a letter to her son in Shu Prefecture, ordering him to immediately come back to the capital. She was only waiting for him to arrive in the capital and enter the palace to greet the emperor. Then she could announce the emperor's death and prepare a fake imperial edict to have her son steal the throne. So, Chinsei, who held massive military power and the ability to change heaven and earth, became a thorn in the Empress Dowager's side and had to be eliminated. Chinsei was ambushed countless times along the way, but when he was nearing the capital, he was betrayed by a subordinate. He was plotted against and picked up by Zhang Shulin. The subordinate he would soon meet was his childhood friend. They had a strong friendship. After meeting him, the subordinate immediately took him to receive medical treatment, and they used silver needles to dispel the congestion in his brain and restore his memories. After Chinze restored his memories, in order to confuse the Empress Dowager, he didn't change his identity immediately, but continued to hide in Qingmin County, planning everything in secret. He would send his men to intercept the Empress Dowager's son, while he personally sneaked into the imperial palace to rescue the young crown prince. While Zhang Shulin was still fretful with worry at the top of the mountain, Qinse had already spurred his horse towards the capital.